and I'll be like, yeah, I know that I'll find somebody, but I'm never getting engaged ever again. I never want to stand in front of a mirror in a wedding dress shop and think, this is the dress that I'm going to get married in, and then never make it down the aisle. But who wants that? No one wants that. Hello guys, and welcome back to another episode of Coming Up for Air with myself, Lou. I hope we're all okay. Welcome to my Friday. I'm recording this on a Friday. I really enjoy recording these on a Friday. It gets to, I get to debrief the whole week with you and talk to you about what I've been up to. Obviously, last week I had a little break. I think that is the second time I haven't posted a podcast for like the 2 years I've been doing this. So I just took a little holiday. Last week was quite overwhelming. I'm trying to get my teeth into something new and it just took all of my time. And sometimes I think when you work like for yourself and you have things like this, you do have to be quite disciplined, otherwise it can take over. And sometimes I do sit there and I think, oh my God, it's like 1:45 and I've got to do X, Y, and Z before the end of the day, and I've got to do this and that. And it was one of those days, and I knew that I was going to be away at the weekend and I needed to clean my house and just like things like that do sometimes have to come first, because they're the things that make my head feel clear and make me feel like I'm adulting and that I've got all my ducks in a row basically. And it just had to come first last week. And it is a full-time job. So, people with full-time jobs do have to take holiday. So I did take a holiday last week. Thank you for being so patient. I know I had quite a few messages from people saying that they missed me last week and they missed our chats. And that's really nice that I have created something that people feel that way about. And like I said, if I can avoid doing that, like pre-recording, then I will. I pre-record a lot of my Patreon stuff just so I can get it out midweek. So depending on how busy my week is, I always know that my Patreon followers are going to get those 2 additional episodes a week. I had a question about my Patreon the other day. Someone said how does it work? And so I just wanted to touch on that before we go into anything this week. My Patreon is another podcast provider, and you can upload videos, you can upload audio content. You can do quite a lot over there. I see a lot of creators over there doing loads of different things. I upload 2 additional episodes a week over there. I talk about so much stuff. I did an episode 2 weeks ago on money. I've just done an episode on anxiety. I've done episodes on cheating over there. I've done episodes on loads like moving house and things like that. I do all over there, and they are within 15 to 14 minute episodes. So if I do anything over around the half an hour mark, I always just publish 1 episode a week. If I do 2 and what I do try and do over there is do 2 short episodes. So my one on anxiety this week was 10 minutes. My one on money the week before was 40 minutes. So I just published 1. You get additional content over there and you get full access to me. And what I mean by that is there's people that have messaged me on Instagram this week on say Monday that I'll reply on Saturday or Sunday when I've got time. People on my Patreon don't wait for replies, and I always try to get back to them within 2 days, because like I said, life is very busy and I want to give my full attention. People will reach out and they will tell me some quite heartfelt personal stories, and I just don't want to reply back saying, hey, I've got an episode on this, why don't you listen to this? I always say that I've got a podcast that they can listen to, but I also do like to go back with some in-depth advice. Everybody on kind of Instagram and TikTok gets that reply as well, but on my Patreon, I get into how I felt and, my advice, and I offer that little bit more on my Patreon. So the links are in every single description of everything that I post online. So my Spotify, my Apple Music, and my YouTube, all the links to my Patreon are found in there. They're also found in my bio of my TikTok and my Instagram. It's $4.50 a month. Somebody messaged me the other day and said, "You've been like a therapist to me, you're undercharging." But I wanted to make it accessible for everybody. Sorry, guys, there's a little annoying fly in my room. I wanted to make it accessible for everybody. And I know that, I talk about how much money I spent on that Manifesting Your Ex Back course. It was like 70, I think it was like £70, £70 of nothing. Like nothing helpful was in that course. It was the most toxic thing. However, it did then prompt me to do all of this. So you could say it was actually a good thing that I went out and bought that and got absolutely no value from it, because now I've created this and I've created a platform and a community where people can get some value from it. And I'm not just like daylight robbing you blind. Like I said, it is only $4.50 a month, and I am in the process of creating something very exciting, which I'm going to share in a second, because I hate those content creators that are like, I can't talk about it yet, to create suspense. No, I'm going to talk about it because it's the best thing that I think I've ever actually come up with. Anyway, so if you do want access to that, like I said, you can find the links anywhere. If you're like, Lou, I have no idea what I'm doing, I don't know where to find these links, you keep talking about these links, I can't find them, message me. Message me on Instagram and I will send you the link so you can find my Patreon. You can come and join my Patreoners over there. There's loads of us over there now, and I've always said that I wanted to get like a Discord chat like started, and so like we can actually have like pure community vibes over there at the moment. But like I said, I'm a very busy gal. Instagram and TikTok keep me incredibly busy. This keeps me incredibly busy. So I don't want to put too much pressure on myself and create something that I can't keep on top of. That is my biggest fear, that I'm creating stuff that I can't keep on top of. And so my Patreon at the moment is really nice and ticking over. And that is why I always try and encourage people to come over to my Patreon, just because messaging me on Instagram and TikTok, the other day, I was hovering over my requests in my Instagram to kind of make sure I wasn't letting my Instagram requests pile up, but I then did nearly hit delete all. I was like, oh my God, that would have been a catastrophe. If I had hit delete all, everybody that would have messaged me that week wouldn't have got a reply, because I wouldn't have seen it, because I would have deleted it. So you are very safe over on Patreon. You will always get a reply from me. And you can come over and stay as long as you want. If you scroll through the episodes and you think this is not for me, this is too overwhelming, there's too much on there, then that's fine. If you just want to come over and chat to me, that is also fine. So eventually I am going to be offering coaching in this space, which is scary but exciting, but we're going full throttle or full blown ahead. I'm just going to take the bull by the horns. That is something that I'm going to do. How it's going to look, I have no idea at the moment, but we are starting small. So what I wanted to talk about to you this week is that I'm creating something, having listened to a podcast, and it was a podcast all about starting businesses. And these are all the podcasts that I listen to now. I used to listen to podcasts on like mindset and training your mindset and, breakups. And I'd listen to the Shits and Gigs guys. I'd listen to Luana, and I'd listen to stuff that would take my mind off my breakup. Now I listen to things that are going to benefit me business wise, and that next step, how I'm like creating ideas, how I find my creative flow and all the rest of it. So I was listening to a podcast the other day, and they were saying that, creating small parts of something bigger is better for your audience to digest. In my head, I want to create a survival guide for people going through a breakup. That is the bigger picture. I want to be able to help people through their breakups, know that they can come to me, know that the content that I put out online is beneficial, know that everything that I'm saying is true. So I have mentioned her before, a woman called Amanda Francis, who I am a very, very, very big fan of. She is the money manifesting queen, is what she calls herself. She has like the most incredible money mindset, and I learn a lot off her. I think that's why I've got a good relationship with money, because I read her book back in 2000, and I think it was released in 2019, I can't remember. But she gives me a lot of encouragement, and I want to start creating things that, yes, I can talk about, the horrible parts of my breakup, but I want to start empowering people through their breakups, not just women. I want to empower men as well. And I want to do it in a way that is accessible to people, because I always talk about how therapy wasn't actually available to me after I got to the point where I was spending so much money, because a lot of my savings went on therapy. So, your savings, if you're not putting into your savings, they're not getting any bigger. And I was concerned that I wasn't going to be able to afford therapy, which meant, what did that mean for my mental health? So I put it on a credit card, and I always say I'm very fortunate in the fact that, I've got a credit card to be able to put therapy on. I know some people don't even have that, but I do still feel like I was fortunate to be able to get therapy. But was it massively accessible to me? No, it was a financial decision that I made where I thought, okay, I can do this. I can manage these payments. But, I was spending £150 a week at one point on therapy, because I genuinely did not think that I was going to make it through every single day. It was horrendous. I was so overwhelmed, and every session wasn't a therapy session. Sometimes I just used to sit and cry, and I was crying in front of somebody that was like non-biased. So having somebody sit and cry in front of you is hard, but having someone sit and cry in front of you when they're a stranger is a little bit more easier to deal with. I sat in front of my sisters and cried, and my parents and cried, but having that just like non-connection to my ex made it so much easier. Anyway, I digress, as per. So I wanted to create something that was accessible to people. I wanted to create something that people would be able to go and look at. So that being said, like I said, have created something that is going to act as a bigger picture, but I want to release it in small, digestible chunks. So my idea and where this all came from was the fact that I love journaling. I love getting things down on paper. I'm incredibly visual. We all know that. I say it all the time. I give you really visual coping mechanisms. And creating content in this space is actually quite hard to stay relevant. I know Pete Wicks, Sam Thompson, they've got a podcast called Staying Relevant. It's so true. It's really hard to stay relevant. And I think I have done quite well to stay relevant for 2 years in this space, because I think sometimes everyone's breakups are different. And everybody will be able to take certain things from my content and be able to use them in whatever way they want. I want to broaden my horizons. Now, if you follow me on Instagram, you'll know that I've gone through a big change on my Instagram. Yes, I'm still posting running content, but I'm also posting stuff about being single, my heartbreak content, and all the rest of it. But I do want to branch out more into the single life, being 32, sitting in a space where I never thought I would sit. I never thought that I would be single at 32. So I want to talk more on that. So in a roundabout way, what I'm trying to tell you is I have created something called the Breakup Bible. Now, in my head, this idea started as an idea where I was like, Breakup Bible, somewhere where someone can get all their thoughts and feelings down in one place, in a Bible. Then I thought, that's great, but also people can buy journals, so you don't have to buy my Breakup Bible. And then I was like, why don't I call everything I'm doing the Breakup Bible? And I envisioned that the Breakup Bible as being the umbrella as to where everything I want to create sits underneath. So the Breakup Bible will have things like a no contact guide and things to do with my podcast under there. And there'll be mini courses, my coaching. I've just said that I want to branch out into coaching. That will all sit under there. So I am hopefully going to create something that is going to be a lot bigger than just a Bible as such. I have thought about it. And the idea came from this podcast where this woman was saying, people always like to be a part of something and part of a community. And I want to create this Breakup Bible sort of umbrella term to basically house everything that I'm going to do in there going forward. It kind of like where my first course sits. I've learned a lot from doing that first course. There are going to be guides. That's what I'm trying to say. No contact guides and how to deal with certain situation guides. And that's all going to sit under that big umbrella. So that is what I'm working on at the moment. So when you hear me say I'm really busy, it's because I'm creating and curating everything that's going to sit under that umbrella, and it can be quite overwhelming, and you work to your own deadlines, so you have to put the pressure on yourself. You are your own boss. And so, yeah, it does get a little bit overwhelming. Anyway, I wanted to update you guys with that because I don't like it when creators are like, I'm working on something so exciting. I mean, I've done it in the past, but it just doesn't get you anywhere. I want to create momentum and I want to create excitement and stuff. So I want you guys to get excited about this. And I want you to think, this could actually really help me. And whatever she's going to put underneath this, I'd be really interested to have a look at. So that is where we're currently at with that. Anyway, today I have got a message. This is what I mean by my Patreon and my Instagram and my TikTok DMs. I have definitely got a message somewhere from around, I'm going to say like 20-ish people asking me to do an episode on losing the fasts. So I've done an episode on getting through your fasts, the first anniversaries, your Christmas, New Year's, everything. I haven't really spoken much on losing the fasts. And when I said this to my mum the other day, she was like, what are you talking about? And I was like, people that have got engaged and people that have bought houses and people that have got married and people that have got babies, losing the first sort of experience of that does happen when you go through a breakup. And I felt this hugely with my engagement. One of my oldest friends has just got engaged and we were talking this morning about wedding dresses, and she was like, I know that you won't mind seeing my wedding dress. I trust your judgment. This is the kind of dress that I'm going for. And I said to her, I literally replied to her and I said, hey, did I ever show you my wedding dress? And she said, bless her, I never wanted to ask because it's so personal. And I was like, oh my God, no, let me show you. So I showed her, and it's so funny when I got the picture up. I'm wearing a mask because it was like literally the end of 2020. When did the end of 2020 or the end of 2021? It was the end of 2020. So I've got a mask on when I've got this wedding dress on. It's just wild. It's so funny. But like, I also think now, having gone through that, I can show my children. It's like, if I wanted to share my story later on in life, that is like a big piece of history. It's like I chose my first wedding dress during a time where we had to wear masks in places, which is wild. But I sent it over to her and she was like, I didn't want to ask because I didn't know how you were like talking about it and stuff. And I'm going to openly admit and hold my hands up and say that for the first year after my breakup, I did not want to know about anyone getting married. I didn't want to know anybody about getting engaged. I tell a story about how one of my close friends got engaged and I had to leave the engagement party. It was too much for me. I did not care. I was distraught and I really, really struggled. And so, yes, I can't. And there are going to be things that I can't do. I can't relate to the first children. I can't relate to the first, your first wedding and stuff. But I think a lot of what I'm about to say will relate to definitely like your wedding. Obviously, children's a different kettle of fish altogether, and I try and stay away from that because I can't comment on it, and I wouldn't want to offend anybody who is a parent listening to this thinking, God, she has no idea because she's not a mother herself. So I will sort of steer around that, but hopefully some of the advice that I give you in this you can relate to your situation, because like I said, not a lot of people will consider that like these sorts of things do really hurt, and they're things that I did think about. And when I've read messages and stuff, and I've had a message recently from somebody saying, can you talk about losing the fasts? And I was like, oh my God, how funny. I was actually going to do that. Anyway, I've rambled on for however many minutes. I'm going to say 20. So without further ado, guys, let's get into it. So I know a lot of my followers are in the same boat as me and were in the same boat as me. I know a lot of my followers are not in the same boat as me, but I obviously was with my ex since the age of 14, met him when I was 13, started going out when I was 14. So everything was a first, everything. So if you are sat here listening thinking, I'm in the same boat, then you are going to be able to relate to a lot of what I've said. However, I know that people have relationships when they're younger and then obviously don't buy a house and then meet somebody. It might not be your first breakup, but it could be the first time that you have got engaged. It could be the first time that you've bought a house with somebody and you are losing that sort of first time niceness. You don't ever, when you buy a house, think, oh, do you know what? I'm just going to make sure that this has been done. You know, I'm going to buy the house in this way because, you know, when we break up, and like, you don't say to somebody when they propose to you, like, oh, is this going to be the first and last time? You don't say that. You say yes, because these things kind of give you the impression that this is like long term. This is, you know, for life. I remember my ex saying to me on the night that we got engaged, like, you are actually my wifey for lifey. And because there was that song when we were younger, and I don't even know who sings it, but that's one of the lyrics. And I remember him saying, like, you are my wifey for lifey. And that's what you genuinely think, because these big gestures, people that say to you when they propose to you, this is a ring to symbol that we might split up, but for the time being, I definitely feel like I have the feelings of wanting to marry you. And I can't express to you how much that was what my ex meant. And I laugh about it now because I have to. But like, he basically put a ring on my finger saying, hey, this is a ring and it's, you know, I love you and I definitely want to get married to you. I'm not entirely sure, but I think this is going to make me feel less guilty about what I've done in my past. So will you marry me, but also potentially not marry me, but also marry me? I think that's what happened. Obviously, it didn't. He proposed, and that was that. I went clarting off down the beach, yelling, I'm going to be a wife. I then woke up in the morning and yelled it off the balcony. It was like one of those times where you think, oh my God, is this really happening? Like the best time ever. Not at any point did I think I'm going to have to do this again once in my life, because this is actually mean for life. And I think what people don't realize a lot of the time when you say that you've gone through a breakup, because especially with me, I don't like to delve deep when I meet somebody new and say like I went through X, Y, and Z and all of these things on the first date. They just will presume that it's like, oh, it's a breakup kind of thing. They don't then sit there and become sympathetic of the fact that you've lost the first times of everything. And you have to also sympathize for yourself and take a moment for yourself, because the house you bought wasn't just four walls. It wasn't just, you know, bricks and mortar. Practically, yes, it was. And, you know, it is that. But it was the first time you had a key to something that felt like was yours together. And now more and more these days, people are buying houses first, or they're moving in together first. And, you know, my mum would always say, well, we got married first and then we moved in together. Great. You also got married in the 60s. So times have changed, or the 70s, or whenever they got married. I don't know. Times have changed, and it is more common to move out of your parents' houses in together and then do the engagement, then do the wedding, then do the babies, you know, or, you know, move in together, have babies, then do the wedding, or cut the wedding part out and just have babies, whatever that person, whatever you feel like you want to do with your future. But what I'm saying here is, you know, a house tends to be like the first time that as a couple you have something that is together yours. So it's yours together, and you own it together, and you start living this life together, and that is how you envision your future. So like for me, it's, yes, I had a house with somebody and people would say, oh, you know, you sell it and you move on. Yeah, you do. But with selling and just moving on, and for me, it was like, I didn't move in with him, he didn't move in with me. We moved in together. And so I remember the first time we cooked pizza and sat on the island unit, and he bought beers and I had wine, and it was like, right, we're doing this, we're moving in together. And when you talk about your breakup, when people say, did you have a house together? I reckon that is just like a, how deep were you in? Like how far into, you know, being in a relationship together were you? When they're not asking like, oh, that's really sad, like you did build like a future with each other and that showed real intent of like being together forever. Because what I want to know is like, who are these people that are buying houses with people with the zero intent to stick around? I know a few myself. Not personally, but I know of a few people that have bought houses with people and then split up with them and said, oh, it was never my intention to give you the idea of forever. It's the biggest loan you'll take out in your whole life. You will never, ever, ever have a loan as big as your mortgage. If you know people that have got £500,000 worth of a mortgage, do you know anybody that takes out a loan that big? No. it is a huge commitment, and it's everything that came with it. And I will always say that I didn't feel emotionally attached to my house. I felt emotionally attached to the life that I lived. I felt emotionally attached to the fact that I got home at the end of the day and there was somebody there, or I was always in when my ex got home at the end of the day. I fell in love with the fact that I could put dinner on the table. Fell in love with the fact, I was talking on my Patreon the other day about me being a housewife and always having something in the house for my friends to eat, for my ex's friends to come around and eat, and I was known for my brownies. And like, I fell in love with that. I fell in love with getting up on a Saturday morning, cleaning the whole house, being a housewife, having freshly made like cake in the oven, and people coming around and being like, God, you really are like the model housewife. Because I friggin' was. And I worked hard to maintain this image that I loved so much. I say I worked hard, it wasn't hard work. What I was doing was hard work, but maintaining that image of a housewife wasn't hard to me, because it wasn't hard for me, because I absolutely loved it. And that's what I fell in love with. I fell in love with the first time that I could be able to say, like, pick your dirty washing up. I fell in love with the first time that I could say, like, let's go and get a Christmas tree for Christmas. Like, let's go and get Christmas decorations. Let's go and pick out of all of our Christmas food. And I loved being able to come back from holiday and just having like all of our stuff in one place. And it wasn't like we had to say goodbye to each other and go and sleep at our parents' houses. I completely fell in love with that life with somebody else. And when you go through a breakup, that is what you are mourning. You are mourning the loss of the fact that you had this life within the commitment of being in a mortgage with somebody. It was what went on within that, I feel, that like was the biggest hurt to me. And especially in my own home, it was like the safety element. I touched on this on my Patreon again this week. The fact that I thought I was in a safe environment, and I genuinely wasn't. This is a safe environment for me. Like, being here, being in this house, is the safest place that I can be. I was in an unsafe environment, and then I continually put myself in an unsafe environment, and I talk about it on my anxiety episode on my Patreon. So if that's something that you want to go and listen to, then head over there. But I strongly and truly believe that the pain and the hurt comes from the fact that you went from being you two to being us. So like, it was like, oh yeah, we're just going to nip home. And like, we're just going to nip to the shops, and you become us. And these are all the little things that I think people actually don't realize that you are grieving. And it goes down so granular to that, like so small, to those little things, those little comments. And with your ex, and this is what I mean, this is what I meant when I said at the beginning, like, you could be in the same boat as me, you might not be. But for me, that was a first time for everything. That was like my first time living with somebody. That was my first, because I'd never moved away to university. It was my first of everything. And the reason why it hurt so much was everything that I've just detailed, obviously just then. That's why it hurt so much. And it wasn't the fact that I had to sell my house. It wasn't the fact that I had to say goodbye to the house that I built over 2 years, the effort, the dream kitchen, the dream oven, everything that I had in that house was my absolute dream. My ex worked so hard to make sure that we were both so happy and so comfortable in that house. Yes, it was sad that I walked away from that house. That wasn't what I was sad about walking away from, because I love this house so much more. I was sad, and it hurt, and I was emotionally attached to the life that I lived within that house and the person that I was. And it was infuriating because people didn't see that. People thought I was grieving the fact that I had to downsize, and the fact that, I was so proud of my house. I started a house account on Instagram. People thought that it was like a pride thing, and it wasn't that. It was everything that went on the minute that the doors closed. It was that life that we had, and us, and what time are you coming home for dinner, and can't wait to see you tonight, and all the rest of it. And for me, like I said, I'm going to talk on getting my first house and getting engaged, because they're the two things that I can talk about. But there might be some points that I've just raised there that you can apply to your situation if you have children or if you got married. But the house thing for me, I never came away and thought, oh, do you know what? I am never buying a house with somebody ever again. That thought process never crossed my mind, because I think I was buying my own house. It was like, well, I can get that again. I'm going to have another house because I have to live somewhere. Because, you know, yes, there was an option for me to go home. I could have always gone home. I could have gone and lived with either of my sisters. I could have actually done what I told my ex I was doing and lived in my sister's apartment while she was in America. I could have done all those things. But I think the reason why those words never came out of my mouth of like, you know, I'm never buying a house with anybody ever again, was because I bought this place and I had this place. I will now say, because I always try and keep these episodes fair because people think that I sit and slate my ex. The one probably hardest thing for my ex was the fact that we had to sell the house and the money split. And I genuinely think that he thought that I did him out of money. And so, you know, not fighting his corner, but just boot on the other foot. He might not buy another house with somebody ever again because he might think that he was taken for a ride. Which, if you listen to all my other episodes, you'll realise that he genuinely wasn't, and that wasn't my intention at all. However, if you are in that situation, you might be sat here thinking, do you know what, I actually don't want to buy a house with somebody ever again because of this has happened, this has happened, this happened. You know, I felt like I was done dirty or whatever. And I always talk so proudly about that because of obviously the work and the time and the amount of times I was told never to worry about money and all the rest of it. You know, I gave up my job and my dad worked on the house for 2 years. If you listen to all of my other episodes, you'll know that I talk about this a lot. But you might be in the same boat. That might not be the case. You might have actually had, you know, money taken off of you. And you might say to yourself, I don't want to buy another house with somebody again. And that is how I felt about getting engaged. So I talk about taking my ring off and how long it took me to take my ring off. I took it off at the end of May, I want to say. After I went to a wedding with my ex, I thought, no, it's time. In my house, I was taking it off. Again, there's an episode about me taking my ring off. I think it's on my Patreon. I'm not entirely sure. I can't remember. I've got that many episodes now. But there is. And if you want to listen to it, I will direct you to it because I will do the research and I will find it for you. But I think I took it off in May. But I was walking around my house with it off to get used to it. And like, I can't tell you how many times I'd sit there and go and to grab it and it wasn't there. And, you know, like twizzling it around your finger and stuff. All of those things, you know, you become really aware that you aren't wearing a ring anymore. And so I was doing it in stages and I took it off in my house and then I would move on. You know, I'd go out without it on and more people were recognizing the fact that I didn't have my engagement ring on. And it was like a process that I had to go through, something that I'm going to put under my umbrella of the Breakup Bible, doing these things, taking off your engagement ring. I just think people need reassurance that it's okay to keep your engagement ring on. How many months after? February, March, April, May. So what, like 3 months after my ex left, I was still wearing my engagement ring. I remember my ex actually specifically telling me to keep it on. And it was like, keep it on for as long as you want. Imagine if I was cutting about with my engagement ring on now. Could you imagine? I think people would think it was slightly odd. Anyway, I felt so emotionally connected and emotionally betrayed when it came to my engagement ring. And I remember in a fit of sadness, rage, everything, I remember saying to my mum, I am never getting engaged ever again. And I felt at the time that was so normal to feel. Because like I said at the start, it isn't ever a half-assed promise. It's, will you spend the rest of my life with me? My dad made that commitment to my mum. They're still married. My brother-in-law has made that commitment to my sister. They're still married. Not at any point would I ever think that my friends were getting engaged and getting proposed to by men that are just saying, wear this ring for a bit and I'll decide whether I want to marry you in a couple of years' time. That's how I felt about my engagement coming out of it. Not at the time, coming out of it, it was like, ugh, wear this ring because society says you need to wear it. And I should probably get engaged to you now because it's been 14 years, but I don't know if you want to wear it all the time because I might change my mind. The answer would have been no if that was the proposal. Trust me. And I remember seeing this TikTok and it's so true. It was a girl and she was straight and she was saying, if a boy hasn't proposed to you after 2 years, what are they doing? Do they want to be with you? You know, like she was saying all these things. And I thought, you know, if someone said to me, if a person proposed to you after 2 years, what would you say? And I was a bit like, I'm always a bit like, I don't really know. I don't really know how I'd feel about that. It's so true. Like, if you have major intentions, you know, that you are dating and that you are in a relationship and you're boyfriend and girlfriend and you are there because you are trying to find your forever person, I thought, no, do you know what? Fair play to you, like for actually saying it out loud, because, you know, you might disagree, but I've never thought of it like that. And I thought, oh my God, there is so much truth behind that. So much truth. 2 years? What are you doing? Like, why are you not engaged? And I think with me, obviously, with me, we didn't move out until 2019. So we were then engaged for 2 years after that. So we had been together for 12 years and we had prioritized getting the house done. We had prioritized spending our money in different places. However, I only waited for a ring 2 years after that. My intentions were always there to get engaged. He knew that I wanted to get married. Marriage was very important to me. And so realistically, when people say we waited 14 years for a ring, I didn't. I think I waited a normal amount of years for a ring with our circumstances and the amount of time we've been together, our age, and what we were spending our money on. But I genuinely thought, do you know what, fair play, girl, you tell them, like, what are you doing? Why are you in a relationship with somebody for more than 2 years? And, you know, if they know that you want to get married, what's the problem? Anyway, like I was saying, you know, if the proposal and the declaration of will you marry me was like, will you wear this ring for a bit whilst I decide, you know, whether I do want to marry you or whether there is going to be somebody coming along that's going to turn my attention, whether or not, you know, I am going to be that person that will leave you, I'd have said no. And we would have stopped all the heartache around that. I think the reason why it hurts the most is because obviously it means something different to everybody. And for me, it meant forever. And obviously for him, it didn't quite mean forever. And you don't know that at the time. And you think you know that because you think you know the person. And, you know, you're talking about the future all the time. Well, me and my ex used to talk about the future all the time. But I remember saying to my mum, and I remember it breaking her heart, and I said to her, don't ever think that I am ever going to get engaged ever again, and if that means that I don't get married, then fine, because I am not allowing somebody to leave and then take my engagement ring off ever again, because it was probably one of the worst things I think I've ever had to do, because it was something that I longed for and it was something that I wanted. My parents had been married for however many years. They were together when they were 14. I look up to them a lot, and I remember seeing the pain and the sadness in my mum's eyes when I said it to her, having watched my sister get married and the day and how amazing it was. And they thought that I was going to have the same. They'd seen the wedding venue. My best friend had seen my wedding dress. And I think the fact that I had put that all to bed, you know, the first time that I tried on a wedding dress, and that I've been in those situations, and I was like, I just don't want it. I don't want to be in a situation where I'm putting that amount of power in somebody's hands to then just whip away from me. And it took me a long time to see past that. And people would say like, oh no, you'll find somebody. And it takes time to process those feelings massively. I'd say that it's like one of those things where some days I'd have like really good days where I'd be like, no, do you know what? I'm going to give I'm going to give the next person I meet the benefit of the doubt. And then other days I'd be like, I actually don't want it because of the pain that I'm in now, looking at my engagement ring that's back in the box. I remember my therapist saying to me, everything you are feeling is valid, Lou, like absolutely everything. And it's probably going to take you a long time to process this, but do not let it harden you. And I remember thinking, it's not hardened me, it's opened my eyes. And she said, no, you are from a loving family. You are from two parents that are still together. You look up to their marriage. You look up to their relationship. I started off many conversations or finished conversations like my mum and dad, and that's how I would finish them. And she was saying, this is going to harden you if you allow it, and you are going to meet somebody and they might desperately want to marry you. Desperately. They might look at you and think, oh my God, this is my wife. I found her and she is everything that I want. And then you're going to turn around and say, I don't ever want to get engaged because somebody took it away from me. Somebody who also did so many other things to betray my trust, and I don't want that to be a thing. And yes, you could argue the fact that they will still love you if you don't want to get married. But I remember my therapist saying it to me in a way where it was like, why would you allow somebody to take something that is so important to you and still is important to you? It just hurts at the minute because, you've had to take your engagement ring off, but it is still so important to you. Getting married is still so important to you. And having that, connection, having the same last name and things is still so important to you. Do not allow one person to harden you to this. And she is so right. And you might be at that stage where you've probably yelled at somebody and said, you're never going to get married ever again. Or you've yelled at your ex, you've ruined this experience for me, something that I've wanted all my life. I'm never going to have that experience ever again because of you. If you are in that boat, I'm telling you now that a year later from how you are feeling, you will feel completely different. Because now I genuinely cannot wait to share my life with somebody like that again. I can't wait for somebody to get down on one knee, and how I'm going to do it. And I'm going to be so much more clued up on how this person is, how they deal with their feelings, if they are in it for the long haul, if they show me how much they love me. There's going to be so many lessons that I have learned throughout this entire breakup that is going to stand me on good stead to know whether or not I'm saying yes to the right person. And I fully back myself in that now because I've taken time to trust myself with everything that I do in my life. I have taken time to trust myself. I trust my judgment with everything now. And you will find yourself thinking like, how come I didn't see that red flag? I didn't see it the first time. So when am I going to see it again? Trust me, you are so wise to all these things, and you become more wise and you wise up to all these things. And I was speaking to my friend, I went to meet my friend this week, and she was saying, I'm so not used to being with somebody who can talk about their emotions. And she's like, I know exactly where I stand with them. And I say it a lot, I cannot wait to be with somebody who makes me feel appreciated, and I'm not sat there saying like, oh, I love you, just because I've not heard them say love you for a while, or, the person in bed that will cuddle me because that's what I want and that's how I like to sleep. I like to sleep cuddling, and not thinking laying in bed on my own thinking, does this person love me because I've said that I want to be cuddled at night and they haven't. I'm never going to put myself in those situations where I am doubting somebody's feelings for me ever again. If there's doubt, there's a conversation. If you can't have that conversation, I'm off. And so when you look back to like big firsts, like buying a house and getting engaged and feeling like you do not trust yourself because of what has happened in the past, I am sat here to tell you that you are totally allowed to feel like that. I've said why you feel like that, probably because of the house. I said like you felt like that because a ring means forever, a ring means marriage potentially, or a ring means I'm sticking around forever, let's move on to the next chapter of our life. Whatever a ring looks like, I'm pretty sure a ring means forever. And I am telling you that you will get back to the point where you are becoming excited for that. And I have totally reframed how I view my wedding. And my wedding was going to be smallish. I was going to get married in a place that could only have 50 people there. My dress wasn't big. And now I want the whole shebang. And the next person I meet will also want the whole shebang because I'll manifest them into my life. And I don't have any doubts in the back of my mind ever that I'm going to meet somebody that doesn't want the same things as me, because you basically get to choose that. And you know that you are having these upfront conversations. Do you want to get married? No. Well, I do. So this isn't going to work. This is how I actually accept the fact that if I met my ex now, we would probably not be compatible. And I know I've said that before. However, the one biggest thing we wouldn't be compatible on is the one biggest thing that is so important to me. He is not bothered about a wedding. I'm unsure about marriage. I can't really speak for him at the moment, but a wedding, he was not bothered about. He did not care. I want to be in a relationship with someone that is like, our wedding is going to be the wedding of the year. My best friend is getting married, and I know she won't mind me saying this. I just know they're getting married in Cyprus, and I just know that they both want the same thing. It's going to be the best wedding ever. My other close friend, she got married in a registry office because they weren't bothered about the wedding. They just wanted to be married because they wanted a baby, and now they've got a baby. And she always says to me, I would never go back and do it differently, ever. She was so happy with her registry office marriage. Everybody's ideas, the marriage and the wedding and how that looks is different. My learnings from this is that if you do not align on things like that, there will be tension down the road. You can't, these things like, do you want a wedding? Do you want a marriage? Do you want children? They're kind of non-negotiables if you want them and the other person doesn't. I don't think you can work through that. I think you have to have the same sort of opinions on stuff like that. But I wanted this episode to be a episode that validated your feelings. I wanted an episode to say that I've been through it. This is how I dealt with it. This is probably why you're feeling this way, which I think I've covered. And I just wanted to leave you on like 3 points that I've written down, sort of like mindset shifts, because we know that I love a mindset shift. But the first one being like, you are not starting from scratch. You are starting with experience, which is something that I say all the time. And if you are new here and this is the first episode that you have listened to, I have a whole episode on this. You are not broken. You are not, damaged. You are not behind. You are so much wiser now. Like I said, there are certain things that I pick up on people and I think, red flag. And I'm like, that wouldn't have been a red flag had I not gone through my breakup. I'd have never thought, that's a red flag. Not only does it help me, but I also bring it out in my friends. I'm like, that's a red flag. And they're like, really? And then when I explain myself, they're like, actually, yeah, that is a red flag. You are so much wiser now. You get to have the conversations. And I think the older you get, the more you are not messing around. And if I get to 40 and I'm still single and I meet somebody, I am not messing around. We are getting married within a year. Are we getting married? Do you want a wedding? What does your wedding look like? I think, when people say, God, they were talking about marriage and kids so early on, I think it's a really important conversation to have. And again, if you don't align on that, it isn't going to work. But you are so much wiser going into a new relationship. Just because you lost your first, to somebody who didn't value who they had in front of you doesn't mean that the next person is going to do exactly the same. If anything, you are going to be so much more wiser to certain red flags, certain things where you think, oh, that's not going to work. You are going to be wiser. You are not going to allow yourself to get in a situation where you are put in a situation where that person is leaving, having asked you to marry them ever again. You're wiser. You're more clued up now. Give yourself credit for that. And even if you don't feel it at the moment, because you might be at the start of your breakup, you will get wiser. 100%. 1000%. Don't doubt yourself. You will get wiser. I doubted myself all the time, and now I back myself 110%. I know what I want. I know what I'm looking for, and I know the red flags to be flagged. The second thing I wanted to leave you on is that, yes, that version of love has ended. However, your capacity to love hasn't. It might feel like it has, but it comes back. My heart was as big as the Grinch's. It was ice cold. There was a moat, big fat dragon, fire around it. You could not get past it. Slippery stepping stones, sinking sand, like that for a very long time. I can feel it getting a little bit bigger. And I can feel it going into a stage now where I'm like, oh my God, I'm literally the greatest girlfriend. Like, I love with all my heart. And I say this a lot as well. I can't wait to be in love again. Being in love is the best feeling ever. And I know that I am like my absolute best self when I am around people that I love. When I'm around my nieces and nephews, when I'm around all my family, I'm so happy. I'm so full. My cup's so full up. I'm just the happiest person in the world. And add a boyfriend and husband into that situation, I know that I am a loving girlfriend. I know that I can love. I know that I love with all my heart because of how much it broke me when the person I loved walked away from me, and the person that I had basically accepted that I was going to love for the rest of my life. Aside from my family, he was the only person that I ever loved, and I wanted to live him for the rest of my life. I have the complete capability to love somebody in that way again, and I know I have, and I know you have as well. It might not feel like it at the moment, and that is okay. Trust me, it comes back. The version of that love has died, but your capability of loving has not died with it. Trust me. And the last thing I wanted to touch on, which I don't touch on very often because I am very much an advocate for, like, you do not have to move on to get over somebody. You don't have to be thinking about getting into a new relationship. When one door closes, another door does open, and the ending of one dream just makes room for something bigger. And that dream for me is that, yes, I know how I love and I know how I feel and I know how, that I express my love and I know the things that I like to have love expressed to me in a way. But I don't know what this version of me is like in a relationship. I don't know what having my own house and inviting somebody into my own space is like. And that excites me because I'm like, I've never been in this situation. Like, what do we do? Do we play house in two houses? Like that dream of like being in a relationship with somebody for all of my life, that took a long time for me to process, to let go of. However, this new chapter of my life is exciting and it makes space for something new. And when you're ready, and when you're ready, that space will be opened up and you'll be able to say to somebody, I've done all this healing. I know exactly what I want. I'm so secure in my life. I have a house and I just want somebody to enrich my happiness, not my life. And because I'm happy with my life now, I don't need to have a distraction and I don't need to be getting over my breakup. And I think that's what excites me the most. I've never lived this life. I've lived relationships. I know I can do them. I can compromise. I can do the housewife. I can do the relaxed girlfriend. I can do the playing house. I can do the fiance. I can do all of that. I can plan a goddamn wedding. I can do all of that. I don't know what this chapter of my life looks like in a relationship. And that is exciting and it should excite you. And if it doesn't, you will get there. These are the reasons why I sit here week in, week out to tell you and to give you confidence that you will get there. I promise. I hope this episode has helped. I've really enjoyed doing it. I didn't say at the start of this episode that I've just let my hair dry naturally. So apologies if you are like watching on YouTube. I have got huge hair. Well, I'd say I've got huge hair. It's not as big as it usually is, but I just let it dry naturally today. Like I always say, guys, please come and join me on my Patreon. It's growing. We're getting bigger. It's exciting over there. If you want any extra additional help, I have a course called Become the Best Version of Yourself. That is also available through my links that you will find in my bio of my TikTok and my Instagram. If you fancy watching my episodes, I am available on YouTube. You can go over there. I've got around 200 subscribers on there now, which is really good. And as always, guys, if you do need me, please message me. Like I always say, my social inboxes get emptied about once a week. I am totally available on Patreon. Also, I look forward to seeing and hearing your reactions to my new content that I'm going to be putting out there about my breakup Bible, my umbrella breakup Bible. I'm very excited to get my teeth into that and to be able to actually show you something in a couple of weeks' time. As always, I hope you have a brilliant Friday. I'm sending you so much love. Have yourself a gorgeous weekend. Look after yourself. Bye.